Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have my early game Stormweaver Sorceress guide to help you blast through all of the Act 1 to 6 bosses, while also being able to be tanky enough to at least eat some of their attacks on Cruel difficulty. I think it took me roughly like 20-ish hours of playtime to finish Cruel using this setup, but the main idea behind this is that once you're fully locked in, you'll be able to play at your pace and slow the game down on demand to how you feel like playing in that moment, so you don't have to worry about making too many mistakes. Even when you get to the last boss on Cruel, you'll be able to blow his back out no problem without even really breaking a sweat. But it's not just about the end of the game, because we have to get there first. So while we're leveling, we'll be mixing it up a little bit to deal with the tougher areas, like the Dreadnought, for instance, which is considered to be one of the more difficult areas on Curve, and we'll just be turning that into a complete joke. So like usual, all text guys referenced in my videos are always linked down below, and will always receive small updates in my Discord first. And this, again, is mainly focused on the Stormweaver Ascendancy, but some of it can be translated over to Chronomancer if you try hard enough. But for now, we're lighting this off with the fastest way to make your character stronger, and that's what gear to look for. You just need to make sure you stay on top of this stuff, because there can be, honestly, there is just a severe gear drought in the campaign sometimes. They did say they did a little bit of a patch to fix that, but we'll see how far that goes. So damage wise on weapons, you're always looking for plus to all skills. Right now I have +2 to the level of lightning spells. This is going to be the most damage that you can get. In my offhand, you'll also see that I have plus level to all cold spells, and I'm in the way, so I'll just move really quick here. The main reason that you want to have two separate weapons with two different things, or at least for my setup, is because you can use a weapon with a specific set. So for instance, Frostbomb is on weapon 2, and if I put it on weapon 1, because it loses those +3 levels, it loses quite a bit of damage. So you just want to make sure that it's on there, and you can access this menu just by clicking this little arrow on any of your skills. All of mine are set up already. After that, though, we're looking for stuff with spell damage and lightning damage, maybe cast speed, and I even saved my very first staff that I used. This thing hard carried me through Act 1. And you can see just had a massive amount of damage at +1 to all skills with cast speed, and it felt really good to use. So the easiest way to get really good gear is to go to your vendors, and then you just want to put in rare skill. I have mine on copy paste, and then it'll highlight the exact weapons that you're looking for, so plus skills or rare. I also just snapped this over to Act 1 really quick so you can see what it's like. You just go in here, pop it in, and you have an insanely good ring. Like, I couldn't imagine that I got that at level 12. And then you would just go to your second guy and copy paste it, and it pops all of his rares up for you, right? So pretty much everything you should be looking for. You imagine you're level 8, you walk up to the vendor, drop that in. This is the kind of thing that helps keep your character strong and powerful early on in the game. But also don't sleep on some of the blue stuff, because you can upgrade it. And the main stats we're looking for on armor are max energy shield, maximum life, and maximum mana. Our energy shield is something we're going to be speccing into pretty heavily, so that's going to help us eat quite a bit of damage that would have otherwise killed us. See, we'll have the same thing on all of our gear right here. On your chest, you also want to go for spirit if you get lucky. If you don't, it just is what it is. On your rings, this is also where you're going to get a lot of resistance. And on your necklace, that most people are going for all attributes and max life, max ES. But you also want to go for plus level to all skills on this if you can get it. It's unbelievably strong and makes you do so much more damage. As for your belt, you are looking for the same technical theory, but on this you also want increased charms slots, which I don't have, but you'll be able to get a total of 3 if you get lucky. The one I use and still use a lot is cannot be stunned. The quality of life on this is just massive. One thing to keep in mind is energy shield gets completely trashed by poison, so immunity to poison is extremely valuable and one of the better charms for any time that you're running into poison damage. And then after that, if you run into a tough boss or something that you're struggling with, put on the resistance for that. Put the resistance on for that area. So like the last boss in Act 1, for instance, lock in some extra cold resistance on your charm, and you'll be good to go. So we'll lock our skills in with the very first thing we're going to do when we first load into the game. And if you choose wisdom movement, this doesn't matter to you. But if you choose mouse movement, having a force move button is insane quality of life. Forcing your character to move exactly where you tell it to is a quality of life that's unmatched. So do that right away. Then we're going to explore that first drowned area. There's going to be a yellow chest, I'm pretty sure, with spark in it. You're going to open that up and instantly get the skill, so you don't have to use a skill gem on it early. And then you're going to support that with Unleash. I'm also going to be talking about quite a few different support gems, and if you don't have them, don't worry about it. Just take them in the order that you get them, because I am doing a priority list for you as well, and it's nothing to stress out about. So Unleash is going to give our spark charges, and it's going to just let us shoot a ton of extra sparks out, which is super cool. It's also going to let us do a lot of extra damage. After that, we're going to take Pierce. Pierce is insanely valuable. Also, to access support gems, you just click on a support gem and you can go to all gems and just type in exactly what you need in the keywords here, or you can just hover over the skill and it'll have it that way too. After that, our third slot is going to be a Jeweler's Orb. So these are extremely rare. You're going to want to socket this into Spark right away. And then I have 3 suggestions for Spark. I personally love Arcane Tempo because the cast speed makes it feel super fluid and lets you just have huge burst windows. So that's personally what I use. But a lot of people really like Controlled Destruction. The extra 30% damage is really solid. And Acceleration is really good if there's a lot of ranged enemies because then the bolts get to them faster. Later on, we'll be mixing the support gems that we use on this up when we get to like Cruel. But for now, this works just fine. After that, though, we're going to lock in Flame Wall because we are basically casting our sparks through this all the time. The added fire damage is like ridiculous. Like, it helps you clear the screen so much faster. And on top of that, it also ignites everything that it hits. Just to show you what it looks like, we take Fortress with that, and it's going to make a circle around you instead, and then we just cast through it, and it lights all of our bolts on fire. Our next skill is going to be Frost Bomb. I'm pretty sure we only have 3 skills at the top that are worth taking anyways, and Ice Nova just isn't worth it. And on top of this, we're going to support it with Glaciation because more freeze buildup is something that we're going to be using on other skills later. And then after that, you want to take Magnified Effect because size does matter sometimes. Then we're going to level up a little bit and we're going to get Orb of Storms. This is going to be one of our big lightning debuffs that is going to like seriously carry our damage eventually. We're going to put lightning exposure on this, which is going to make the enemies take more damage from lightning. And then we're going to put conduction on that so it has a higher chance to shock. Our second Jeweler's Orb will also be on here, and we're going to slot either Font of Mana, this is personally what I use, or Strip Away. Strip Away is really solid and it's the more damage option, but quality of life is sometimes better. So just to show you what this looks like, your mana regen is so high that like it just feels really good. Font of Mana is a tier 2 support gem though, so you don't have to worry about that early on at all. Just when you get it, you get it. After that, at the same level, we're also going to lock our second skill gem in as Frostbolt. This is going to help us freeze and lock down tons of enemies. And we're going to take Scatter Shot with this because then we're going to get 2 extra Frost Orbs. And we're also going to remove Glaciation from Frostbomb and put it on Frostbolt. And just to show you what this looks like, you can also light these on fire. So you end up with more damage Frost Orbs that can light stuff on fire. Just a really cool combination. And then after that, we're going to lock in Arctic Armor. You're not going to be able to use Clarity off the rip until you kill the Witch in Act 3 for the first time, because I'm pretty sure she gives you the Spirit for it. So after you can get Clarity, put it on there. These 6 skills will hard carry you right until the end of Act 2. Now to talk about Act 2, I saw a lot of people saying they struggled with the Dreadnought. This is the hardest part of the game for them. And with this setup, if you just take your time, you can just spam Frostbolts and stop the enemies from ever even really attacking you. And you can just W key your way through it without even thinking right into the Act 2 final boss. Jamal can be a little bit tricky, but if you take the time to learn his animations, he's super easy, and you can just lock him down and blow him up basically on demand, and again, take the fight at your pace. It does get a little hectic at the end, but is what it is. You'll also ascend in this act, and 10 out of 10 times you're taking Constant Gale, so Arcane Surge is always on. Mana is a huge problem for lightning builds, and this helps curve that out quite a bit. The only tips I have for your first trial is to try and go for keys and boons, and to path for things with 2 routes. That way you don't get trapped into breaking your run. Moving on to Act 3, things start to get a lot more interesting. Our energy shield is not going to carry our tankiness anymore because Poison doesn't care about it at all. So we're going to try and safely spam Frost Orbs at all of the enemies from a nice distance and slam pots as much as we can and go to town as much as possible. You'll also unlock the tier 9 row of skills basically the second you get into the jungle. That's when they're going to start dropping. And the very first thing you're going to need to grab is Frostwall, because it's going to eat a ton of projectiles and give us the breathing room we need when we get Zerged. The jungle is a complete disaster without it, so make sure you get it, and you're going to want to put Deep Freeze on it. We will be switching Glaciation over to this a little later on, depending on which build we take. We will also be taking Mana Tempest. This drastically increases kill speed and changes the entire dynamic of how we play. We're also just going to be supporting this with Inspiration because this thing sucks mana faster than a Glory Hole, and Premeditation is just going to be more damage. And then if you have the Jeweler's Orb, you can socket Murderous Intent because the Culling Strike just lets us pop things. Then our last skill is either going to be Conductivity or Hypothermia, depending on what you need to debuff, but essentially this is going to be a massive reduction in resistance to the enemy, lets you pop bosses and hard elites. We're going to support that with 25% increased effect, and then on top of that we're also going to be letting it cast faster. Then I also have Hex Bloom on mine so that it chains to more enemies. I don't really think you need this until later on anyways, so I wouldn't worry about it until you have extra Jeweler's Orbs. Now, over anything else you do in Act 3, like you're going to be questing, get the Infested Barrens, ignore everything, rush to the Azek Bog, kill the Bog Witch. She's going to give you 30 Spirit, which lets you Clarity your Arctic Armor, which gives you 30% mana regen, which is super value. She also gives you the Cast on Shock, Freeze, and or Ignite gem, whichever one you pick, which can be really fun to use. But what's even more important for our build, because Energy Shield does not like poison, is her quest reward is this Poison Charm. It gives us immunity to poison. So this turns our jungle adventure from a nightmare-fueled fever dream into a walk in the dodgy part of the city, where you'll probably get one-tapped by a random thing across the screen anyways, but at least it won't be rotting out to poison anymore. But after that, Act 3 is fairly straightforward. You'll also ascend for the second time, getting 2 more points, and this trial sucks, but eventually you'll RNG your way through it. I recommend going for Blood Orbs and whatever sounds the least horrible at the time, but you'll lock in the buffed Arcane Surge for pretty much every build, so just get it done, even go over level it if you have to, and then go back to it. So this is where we'll be changing our skills up and going all in, and we're going to reference our text guide, because this is going to be the perfect little cheat sheet for you to just keep open on whatever. And just notably, what we're doing is we're swapping our Frostbolt out for Frost Wall, and we'll be putting Glaciation on there so that we can snap freeze whatever we spam 3 Frost Walls into. And in Spark, we're also going to be removing Unleash for Controlled Destruction or Acceleration. If you're just killing mobs, Acceleration is substantially better, but if you get to a boss that's tough, lock in with Controlled Destruction. And I was going to use Lightning Conduit, but when I do, it literally just disconnects you from the game, so that's super cool. It's really good if you can actually get it to work, but if you can't, Frostbomb is just fine. It's going to do a ton of damage. And again, the text guide has the entire setup depending on where you're at in the game, so it should just be a straightforward representation of what I used and what I will be using. But if you have any suggestions on how to make it better, just let me know, because I'll be updating this in my Discord first, so any small update is where you're going to see that. So now that we're done talking about spells, we're going to break down our passive skills. Right off the rip, we're just going to take a bunch of extra spell damage. That way we have the outgoing damage we need early on in the game. Then we're going to go for elemental damage, and we're going to take Path of Storms, because lightning's going to be our mainstay of damage for all of Act 1, basically. After that, we're also going to take this elemental damage node, and I'll talk about what this green and orange stuff is in a second. We're going to go down after we take this node and take in this cast speed, because the quality of life and fluidity of your character goes up, and that's really, really important to me in my playstyle. And I should probably be switching over to the mana regeneration nodes fairly soon myself, but early on in the game, this is what you're going to want. After that, Pure Energy is max ES and 10 int. This is going to help beef us up early on in the game, and then Dampening Shield is also going to just help us survive some ridiculous hits. And as long as you have Energy Shield on your gear, these is just going to get way more value. As we move up, we're going to tech up to this Intelligence node with normal skill points, and then we're going to go over to the right. If you need Dexterity for a gem, that's why I have this. You put it in, and then we take this 60% increased spell damage between these 4 nodes for just a super powerful early game start. After that, if you feel like you're too squishy, you can go down here for more Energy Shield, and it's a lot of Energy Shield and mana regen, which is really important. But this Insightfulness node is extremely powerful later on in the game because of that 6% intelligence. The more int you get, the better it's going to be, so just keep that in mind. After that, we're going to go all the way to the top with normal skill points and 1 to the right. So this is also where we talk about what weapon set skill points are. So as you can see, this is highlighted like this, and we flip it over, and it's going to light up all the green ones. This is kind of what we talked about earlier, where I was telling you to put your skills on specific weapons, and this is going to make them even more powerful. So for instance, on our first weapon, we have a bunch of increased lightning damage, and it just helps us pop off. And then on our second weapon, we have all this extra cold damage and freeze build up, and plus the skills. And then we also have our curse on our second weapon. That way we can just get the points. So I switched it over to max roll to have a little bit easier of a time explaining it. So when we allocate weapon skill gems, they do still take a real skill point, but they only take it once. So for instance, I have 16 assigned to weapon 2 right now. So if I switched over to weapon 1, and I was like, we need this curse, it's not going to increase the amount of skills that we use. This lets you swap weapons and get like massive power spikes on stuff you otherwise wouldn't be able to. Like we can invest so many extra points and it doesn't go up. And this is how you get your character insane power spikes early on in the game. To keep it simple, we'll stay in max roll so that way you can have a better visual representation of this. So we're going to go all the way to the left and we're going to grab Touch of the Arcane. That way you have that more arcane surge on you, and then you're going to go for all natural to get that more ele damage, and then you're going to go for increased elemental damage. After that, you're going to take these two elemental damage nodes into exposure effect and then overexposure. That way you deal more damage to pretty much everything, and then you're going to want to take breaking point and storm charge. This is just attack speed stuff, and then this is just 40% damage if you crit recently. The visual representation that I thought looked a little bit nicer with it lighting up in that order for you. I'll also have the text guide with the numerical order on it as well, but just to show you that I personally have these talents taken in my tree. This is what I've been streaming with. This is what I've been using. The next thing we'll do is just quickly talk about what we did with our weapon sets. So we have cold freeze build up with our cold weapon, and then more lightning penetration with our lightning weapon. After that, we also took more freeze buildup. This way we could just snap freeze everything pretty much instantly. This 8% extra damage or twice is nice, but I find that this freeze buildup is so valuable at just locking everything down. You can also take some more of this chill stuff if you have leftover points. I personally just took some extra damage, like whatever. All of this is fine, but this freeze buildup is a massive node, and then +1 level to all cold skills is super valuable, and you can get all this stuff like fairly early on when you're using cold skills. So you're going to be doing a lot of extra damage with your lightning and your cold skills. One other thing to mention again, this is going to make whatever debuff you take between hypothermia and conductivity last even longer, so that way you can just keep like blowing stuff up. I really like this with conductivity. After that, we're going to path down into arcane intensity. This is going to be a lot of mana regen and max mana, which is just amazing. And then for me, this right now is 33% extra spell damage. It's just a huge pump, and at the stage of the game that you get this, you get a lot of value out of it. After that, we grab 8 intelligence and 25 it. Lots of insanely massive nodes here that you need to be taking. After this, I've been theory crafting a couple different routes, which I'm going to try out, but this should basically take you right up into like your first couple of maps. Now, finally, we're just going to quickly talk about how to play the build in the second half of the campaign and early maps. If you need breathing room, all you need to do is cast Frostwall, and you're going to have the space you need and time to set up your combo. And then usually if it's a tough elite or a boss, I open with conductivity, hit him with 3 Frostwalls for the snap freeze. Then I cast Firewall into Mana Tempest, Orb of Storms, and then I hold down Sparks, and that's where the massive damage starts flying out. This is the big combo that just deletes whatever you need it to, and then you can also throw a Frost Bomb in there whenever the time is right. Also, just as a reference point, I know people are going to be talking about Unleash in the comments for sure. It rips way too much of our mana instantly, and that really sucks. We get way more damage in our burst window with controlled destruction because of this. So just keep that in mind, and as you do start blasting through maps and you're killing tons of mobs, all you really need to do is keep Orb of Storms near you with Mana Tempest into Sparks. You only really need to worry about casting other stuff when you get overwhelmed or run into a pack of elites or a boss, and I usually just, again, like as you're seeing, I'm just spamming out orbs and flame walls, and I'm just throwing sparks everywhere, and I just keep recasting that Mana Tempest for the massive damage boost, and then as I exit it, it snaps off, and then I just keep recasting it to get it back on. The majority of the time, everything will be dead before it gets to you, and again, you can usually take 1 or 2 hits before you go down, and I can't stress enough how important Frostwall is when it comes to keeping you alive. It's super clutch, it creates that safe space, and you can nuke everything down from behind it. I also saved this for the very end of the video because this tip or trick or whatever you want to call it is irrelevant to 99% of people. I'm personally swapping Ice Armor for Blink. You won't get the spirit gem you need for this until like your second witch kill, and most people aren't going to want to put it towards Blink. That high level spirit gem is fairly rare and they're kind of scarce, so I understand the reason to not want to do this because it does put your dodge on a 3-second cooldown, but it keeps you super safe and it lets you create the space that you need. I personally have this supported with Clarity and Vitality, but after using it, my survivability just skyrocketed. So it's just something to keep in mind. It is hard to get used to using, but after you do get used to using it, it feels really good, and you're going to see me using this a lot on stream. So I genuinely hope this guide helps you guys out, and if you have any suggestions for when I do the end game breakdown, I'd love to hear them so that I can make the guide even better. But for now, I gotta go get deeper into the Atlas because I don't have unlimited free time. We've got to go to work. So that's gonna be all for now, and I wish you guys the best of luck out there.